I've probably said in sermons before, my back deck area has usually, it's sort of my Zen focus area where I can just center myself. And it's all covered in snow right now. And there's no leaves to admire. It's the season of the sticks, as we all know. And it's just a bummer. It's just a bummer. So I have, admittedly, even the Floridian who's like, snow, is like, it can leave now. It can be done. Maybe that comes with age or something. But I want it gone because I want spring. I want new life. I want green. I want growth. I'm ready for trees to do their thing again, for birds to sing their songs again. I want fresh. And if I were to expound on all the hopes that I ascribe to that feeling, that vibe of spring, the season of new life, I want exactly what Jesus is talking about today in his message in this town of Galilee. Did you all hear what Jesus was talking about? This was his kickoff teaching. He had been baptized. He performed, a miracle at Cana, water into wine, and now he's here. Word is spreading. He's got the scroll open. He's doing this thing, and he reads a sacred text. And the reading he reads, you guys, talk about the hits. He gets Isaiah 61. What a lucky dude. Or he just picked it, He wanted this moment to capture this sentiment. He says, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he's anointed me. He's anointed me to bring good news to the poor. Ooh, good. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives. He's called me to give sight to the blind, to set those who are oppressed free. Talk about good news, guys. This is the hits. This is Jesus 101. This is what Jesus is all about. And then the last line, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. I love it. There's 50 sermons to preach about just the readings we had today. So great news, you're getting 50 sermons. You ready? Get comfortable. No, I'm just kidding. We're doing one. He's setting something off, instituting a year of the Lord's favor. He's instituting a new reality. That's what Jesus talks about all the time. He's come to unleash this kingdom upon the world. What a fruitful season. A season of growth and goodness. But as a Bible nerd, I have to point something out. It's interesting. Isaiah 61 is a great text, but Isaiah 61 that little verse he's reading doesn't conclude with, and proclaiming the year of the Lord's favor. There's no period. There's a comma. And Jesus didn't read it. Why? Because the next line, I'll tell you, proclaim the year of the Lord's favor, comma, and vengeance. Vengeance for our God. Y'all, I have to say, that connotation of vengeance kind of shifted it, right? It was so positive and optimistic. And even after the vengeance bit, it gets back to optimism about bringing oil of gladness to those who are full of sorrow, about those who are covered in ashes being renewed. It's beautiful, but there in the middle of it is this vengeance of God bit. And what's wild is, on this day of vengeance, that line, the Bible can sometimes omit some details, but they rarely omit details of Jesus' teachings. And it says right there, he stopped, he rolled up the scroll, and then it says he sat down. Imagine if I read the reading and just sat down. You'd be like, dude, you forgot something. He sat down. It's like he was teaching something. This day, this proclamation of a year of the Lord's favor, what does that mean? Well, it doesn't include this day of vengeance of our God. I'll admit, I'm a pastor, right? I would think a lot of us would probably be biased and saying, yeah, Jesus does probably omit the vengeance bit because Jesus is all about mercy and love, right? But repeatedly, I think more than that, if you read the parables, if you read the teachings of Jesus, there is a reoccurring theme. Jesus is incredibly concerned about any sense we might have in ourself of self-righteousness. He's very nervous about that. He doesn't want us confused and thinking we have this great ability to cast judgment on somebody else. Does anyone think that's fair? That's pretty fair. If you don't, I will say, remember the criticism he has of you look at the splinter in someone else's eyes when you have a log in your own. Remember that line? Let those who have not sinned cast the first stone. Right? Remember the parable of the harvest? He points out to them as they're like, oh, bud, this harvest would be great, but there's a whole lot of weeds in it. Do you want us to pull the weeds? And he goes, no. Because pulling up weeds will undoubtedly pull up wheat. It's not your job. Wait until the harvest. The harvesters, in this case, he says, the angels, they're in the business of separating wheat and weeds. In all of the work of the kingdom, Jesus is saying over and over, I do not need any help separating good from bad. Why? Any guesses? Why he needs no help in the weeding department. I'll tell you, because truly, to quote Jesus, they don't know what they're doing. Right? While Jesus is crucified, he says, forgive them. They don't even get this. If you need it, Jesus' crucifixion is a perfect example of how we misunderstand good and evil. Jesus was the bad guy as they saw it. What? Jesus? They don't know what they're doing. I think that's really profound. My bias, Jesus, the teacher of parables and wisdom, is saying to us, brothers and sisters, you do have a job. And your job is to be growers. Growers of goodness, mercy, healing. I don't need weed eaters. I don't need you to destroy or prune or pluck up. I'll handle that. I'll handle growing. And guys, as someone who really hates weeding his flower bed, do I love that. But I don't know if I love the other part, what it really means. I struggle. It seems so unrealistic, right? Weeding is part of a well-manicured lawn, right? Weeding is part of things working the way they should. I can't just be focused on growing, because growth, if I'm honest, it can be stifled by pesky weeds. I've seen weeds overtake the things I want to see grow, but weeds overtake them. Weeding and pruning is critical. But I don't know. There's Jesus again going, Because isn't that like the essence of our political divides? Disagreements over what weeds are and aren't? Whether it's policies, whether it's, heck, people? Go. We get into these debates over what would actually help this garden prosper. What would help goodness to grow is if we didn't have this or that. If we were more aggressive at weeding out, pruning, getting rid of what could stifle growth. And if we just do that, poof. But here's Jesus. Hold your horses, you weed eaters. I need growers. I need you to jump onto this mission, which is proclaiming good news to the poor. I need you in the business of healing. I need you in the business of setting people free. Grow, goodness, and mercy. Vengeance is excluded here. He sat down, you guys. I'll tell you a story I experienced where that conflict came into very clear image for me. I was in my undergrad, I was doing Judaic studies. I didn't think I was going to be a pastor, but here we are. I was doing Hebrew Scriptures class, and it was this big theater. And what would happen is when you do these tests, at the end, he would hand back the graded tests to each person, and then he'd put on a little judge, like powdered wig type thing, and bring out a gavel, and he goes, all right, court, you want to make your arguments that you should have a higher grade, now's the time. Maybe some of those questions were confusing. Maybe some of those questions, your answer you think is right because of who knows what. Let's hear it. Which is absolutely in our tradition as people of faith, that we are to be in discourse. So obviously people are like, I got this. And he's like, no, bud. But sometimes there's like a real debate. And someone was having this debate over a question that I had gotten right. I'm feeling pretty good about myself. But he was arguing something that to me I'm just like, no way is C applicable. You couldn't say C is right. And he goes, wait, you said this. And he grabs one of our readings, a book, and goes, right, I'm going to read something. You listen to this. And he reads it. And after he finishes reading, he goes, isn't it fair for me to assume X, Y, or Z? And the teacher went, goodness, that's a stretch. However, I guess I could see how you would do that. Pulled out reading too. You did the reading. So he's really impressed with this. And the teacher goes, okay, partial credit if you put C down. And a bunch of people went, woo! They didn't answer it for that reason, but everyone's getting credit and everyone's really excited. And you hear one person in the midst of it go, this is so ridiculous. And he looks at her, he goes, what's up? And they go, well, C isn't right at all. It makes no sense. I got that right, by the way, and I don't get extra points. Well, why are we doing this? Why even study if you're just going to give points away for wrong answers? And the professor goes, are you mad at me because I'm being generous? Does that sound familiar? Because it should. It's a Jesus quote. It's from one of his parables of the workers in the field when he's paying everybody the same rate, even though they came at different times of the day, worked longer hours. Are you mad at me because I'm generous? And she goes, yep. And she goes, it's just unfair. And I was like, yeah, I guess. There was an uproar, of course, from the class. People wanted their grade. Some of them are very close to this being a very different grade. Spoiler alert, he didn't end up stopping. He kept going. He had a class, But I think that was really important. I think that illuminates. The logical thing to do there is you got the wrong answer, you get it wrong. You get the grade you got. But then there's this other story, this other potential where there's some mercy extended. You may think, maybe you're of the belief like, come on, help them out. Just it's an answer. It's one question. But maybe you're saying they didn't earn the grade that they got, that they are going to get. They got the answer wrong. Both have their merit. But if you're looking for an answer to this matter that isn't just mathematically correct, reasonably, logically correct, if you are trying to determine the answer to that famous question that they put on bracelets, what would Jesus do? If we are learning lessons from this person who said, the last will be first. If we follow the one who says the kingdom is about to flip the world upside down, those who mourn will be comforted and blessed. Those who suffer will be elevated. They will be cared for. If you align with the teacher of the guy who teaches those lessons, you're kind of stuck. Because mercy prevails. It prevails in this scenario, in all scenarios. Mercy is the goal. I mean, just as much as pruning and weeding is wise, as much as fairness is letting the ones who arrived late get paid less than the ones who arrived in the morning, it's straight logic. We are stuck with a teacher who says otherwise. And I do have to remind you, that teacher is the one who formed the cosmos from a whisper. I do have to remind you that teacher is not just a teacher. He is the truth and the light, the life and the light, the Prince of Peace, the good shepherd, the Son of Man. And no offense, I'll have to admit, his ways are probably wiser than my own. The way that Jesus describes on the cross. Forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. I think there's a reason that we resonate with growth. I think it's because we are made for growth. We are made to facilitate what was right in Genesis, Adam and Eve. What's their job? Gardeners. What are we created to be? Caretakers of creation. That's our job. And if we make the mistake of making our job about pruning and weeding, we too take from that tree, saying we now possess the knowledge of good and evil. We can delineate what's good and what's evil. When we eat from that tree that tells us we can separate good from bad, Jesus, God, says, you will surely die. Folks, we're not made to weed. We're not made to prune. Despite what the serpent will tell us, we're made to do. Because if we look to Jesus, we hear a truth that growth will win out. I'll end with this. This was a tough sermon. I tried to contain it. But I will end with this. Think about the story where Jesus renames Simon to Peter, the rock. And he says, you're the rock on which I'll build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. You can think. Gates of hell, right? Hell itself. The church will not be overcome by these growing weeds. I'm the weed eater, baby. I'm going to protect this house. But I think that comes from a misreading. It says the gates of hell will not prevail against God's kingdom. Gates, as I understand them, don't attack or move. So the idea that they're going to somehow affect the kingdom is a misunderstanding. In fact, the kingdom grows. The kingdom overwhelms those gates. The gates of hell will not prevail against these growing vines of love and care. It doesn't stand a chance. There is an alternative to weeding. What could kill a weed? Really healthy growth. It can stifle it. If we focus on fertilizing the good, on growing the good, on caring for the good, on making our job mercy, love, hope, healing, feeding, if we refrain from uprooting good growth in our attempts to identify weeds per Jesus' instruction, folks, weeds don't even factor into the story. They will not be able to overcome the growth of goodness that we're about. I'm looking forward to a never-ending season of growth that Jesus instituted then and has continued to carry on now in this place of healing, of connecting, of learning, of forgiving, of caring. I look forward to living out that mission with all of you. Together, with God's help, we are growing something good. And for that, thanks be to God. Amen.